All right, we're going to do a walkthrough of Learning Activity 8 today. We're going to start with the code from the chapter after we refactored for the main procedure and a couple of different smaller procedures. So you should grab this GitHub repository, open it up, make sure you're in solution mode, not folder mode. So that we can, otherwise you won't be able to do the tests, the unit tests. Again, what this says, we have a main program that just opens up a file here called trades.txt, which is this file, which has some currencies and amounts and prices, a lot size and price. Opens that up as a stream and sends it up into this method called process trades, which is part of the trade processor. Here, this trade processor, this is the code we've broken up. So we had it in a number of or one big program, and we've broken it up in a number of them. So now process trades calls these three methods: read trade data, parse trades, and store trades. Store trades stores the data in a database once you get it there. Process parse trades takes a list of strings and validates them, and then maps them to trade records. We have this separate trade record, which is a destination currency, a source currency, a lot size, and a price here. So that's what our kind of data model we're creating. So this map trade data to trade records takes those strings and map them there, and then so then these are those methods that do those things. And then read trade data reads from a stream, reads each line, and creates an array of those lines to be processed. Again, right out of the text for this chapter, the first half of that chapter 7. Okay, and this is what we'll be working on today, but this doesn't work. When we run this, it's going to give us an error. It takes a while to run. See, it's still running here. It tries to open the connection, and finally it gives us this error. Now, it's hard to see this error. For some reason, it's always displayed small, at least on my systems. I like to copy that detail out, click on that button, and paste it into like an editor or something. You can see this. It says system cannot find file specified was the final exception, and then up here it talks about how connection to the SQL server was not found, maybe it was not accessible or whatever, and so it's not finding that connection, not able to connect to the database. And it's when we try to open up that connection here. Okay, so that's where and again, because we don't have a database, it's trying to open up a connection to database, and we don't have one. So we're going to set up a couple database options here. The first one is we're going to set up a local database file that we can read and write to, so you can see how that works. That's like a Microsoft Access kind of file. And then we'll also look at a cloud solution. The cloud solution is probably easiest for you to use. It's a new way I have of doing this. This is my old way of doing it. So I'm going to show you both, and you have to choose just to get one or the other working. So I'm going to first do this. We're going to create a database file and work on that. So inside here, we're going to go to Tools, not Connect to Server, Connect to Database. And then we're going to make sure we're connecting this to a Microsoft SQL Server database file. That would be like a Microsoft Access file. We need to find that find that file. It doesn't exist, so we're going to create it in our same folder here. I'm going to go inside the subfolder here, and I have a folder for data files. I'm going to put it in there, and I'm just going to call it, what did I call it in the things? Trade database.mdf. So I'm just going to call it, give it a name, trade database here, and hit open. It'll put it in here. I'll say okay. It'll say the file doesn't exist, and it's trying to create trade database.mdf, and I say yes. It will create that. So that'll be created here in this data files. Now, it doesn't show up, so you can actually add an existing file here. I don't know if you can see add existing here, And I have to go find this one. So I put it in this, nope, I didn't put it in that folder. I put it in this folder. It doesn't show up, but if I switch this to data, filter just data files, it should show. Why isn't it? I'm not sure why it's not showing up right now. For some reason it's not there, but you should be able to add existing. Maybe I have to actually add some files to that before it actually shows up or something. So it should be out there. So now I have to create a table and a stored procedure into that in there here. So if I go over here to my Server Explorer, I should see this database file I've just created here, trade database.mdf. Now it doesn't have any tables. I tried to open that up. So if I right click, I can add a table, and this will display the SQL command for adding tables. Let me see if I can move this down a little bit. I'm on a little recording screen here, so it's a little hard to see. And so if you remember SQL, you may not know SQL. So it says create table, the table name, and some information. You can also create it dynamically here. Since I'm not teaching SQL, I just have the SQL here in the data files area called trade.sql. This is the code. I'm just going to grab this create code table, copy that, and close that file again. Now I'm just going to paste it into this. So it'll create this table. Again, an ID, source ID, currency ID, lots, prices, sets that all up there. So I have to say update. It'll create an update script to send to the database. I update the database. Wait a second, and it should display a little green check. I don't know if you can see that down at the bottom here. Let's see if I get that up a little bit. There, updates were created. So that should be fine. Go back here to my server. It doesn't show that, but if I hit refresh, it'll show the trades table now there. The other thing we need to do is create a stored procedure. And again, there's no stored procedures here. So if I right click there and say add stored procedure, it'll be a stored procedure. Now, all a stored procedure generally is a kind of an envelope or a container for an SQL command, often like a select or an insert command. And then you can provide some parameters to that stored procedures, which can be then used in that SQL command. You may not have seen stored procedures very much, so I'm not going to go into too much, just explain basically what they are. So we're going to get this insert trades SQL over here again from the data files area. We're going to copy that. Now here we're going to paste in here. I'll just walk you through this. This is the SQL command. Insert into the trades table these and insert these fields: source, currency, destination, currency, lots, and price. And then with values, and here where we normally specify actual values, we're using these parameters. So a create procedure, here's the name of it, and here's their parameters and their types. And so those parameters are set in here. So using stored procedures are a nice way to kind of isolate your SQL, and then you can interact with it more easily with your code. Also sometimes helps prevent like SQL injection and things like that, since the systems can check for these and knows what to expect for these variables. So I've done that. I'm going to hit update here and then update the database. Green check here means it did it successfully, and so if I go down to my Server Explorer and refresh that, I have a stored procedure and I have a table here. So now I'm ready to go almost. I can start using this. Now to use this in my code here, I need what is called a connection string. A connection string is the string for connecting to the database. So you usually say like data source and the name of the database, what initial maybe table you might want, and some security information here. So we're going to create our own connection string for this database. So to do that, I'm going to go back to the Server Explorer. Now on a bigger screen I would be pinning this here so it just stays open, but I don't have that here. So now I'm going to click on this trade database.mdf file here, and it should show me properties. If the property window doesn't show up, you can just say view properties here. down here, F4, and it'll do it. But it should show your connection string. So I'm going to go down here and click on that connection string and copy it. And I'm going to bring that over to my code here, and I'm going to type in string Tom connection string. Should probably have a better name for it, but that's what I'm going to name it for now. So I'm going to declare that string there, and I'm going to then paste my big long string inside those double quotes here. So it's pasted that in there. But there's some errors here because there's some backslashes in here. So if you want to declare a string with backslashes that are the escape characters, you can put the @ symbol in front of it. So I'm going to put an @ and you'll see all these other ones have the @ symbol. So it says equal @ and then double quotes, and then we declare our string. Now this hard codes in our the folder where this database file is, which isn't the best solution, especially if you're working on multiple machines or stuff like that, but it'll work for us for today. Now if you want, you can actually use some other methods. There's a data directory option where you can use this data directory kind of, I don't know, shortcut, I guess, and do that. Now if you use that, then you can just specify the database name after that, and the data directory maps to whatever folder the executable is. And since we're in debug mode, it'll be in single responsibility principal /bin/debug. If this was in release mode, it would be in the release folder. And then you could store your database file there. We may do that eventually, but we're actually going to be using more this remote database up here and trying that out. Okay, so I've put in my connection string here, but now I've got to use it. So I'm going to copy that. Copy that, and then now my first command, using variable connection, I'm going to create a connection string and going system data SQL connect, and here I'm going to put in my connection string here. So it's going to use that connection string and start using the database. So now if I have that set up correctly, I should be able to run this. It should connect to the database. I've added a number of log statements here to do that. It should add records to the database and say 4 trades processed here, and then it'll be done. So because it loops through, it reads in this. Again, it's reading through this trades.txt file. There are 4 trades here. Read those in, loops through each one, again, processes them, and then adds them. And here's it's using that SQL stored procedure here. It calls the stored procedure, sets up our parameters using our trade records information, and then it executes what's called a non-query to insert that into the database. For us. Okay, so now to check that, I can go to Server Explorer, I can go to the trade database, and I can say show table data, and it'll show that there are now 4 records in that database. And if I run it again, it'll be 8 records and stuff like that. So again, that's our local database file. Now, so that's kind of this option that we went through here. Now let's look at this option, the cloud-based system. I'm going to scroll down so then I can go to the right here. Sorry, the scroll bars on here, and especially this little screen, are a little goofed up. Okay, so we're going to open up Microsoft Azure, which is Microsoft system, cloud-based system. It's very similar to AWS, Amazon's web services, or Google Cloud systems. They all have similar resources, not identical, but okay, so this is Microsoft Azure. They have general resources, they have virtual machines I can set up and run, networking routers and all that sort of stuff, storage solutions I can get remote hard drives, that sort of stuff, web servers, mobile stuff, containers, databases. So here's my databases now. Almost all these will have a non-SQL option. So this is Cosmos DB is Microsoft's one. Google, I mean, yeah, Google's is Firebase or Firestore, and I think there's MongoDB. I don't know what Amazon is, if that's, I don't know. But we want an SQL one. Now you can actually start up a whole SQL server here and do that and run a whole script server on a virtual machine. We don't need that necessarily. We just want kind of a serverless solution. So we're going to go this Azure SQL option here. And I have it created, but I'll just show you quickly how to create it because I want to just show you a little bit about the cloud since we're here. So I'd hit create here to create one. Now I can create, again, whole virtual machines, SQL instances, which are like, which I could connect to with a VPN, or here I just want a single database. So this is the easiest, simplest option. I'm just going to do that for this. You have to have a subscription, and I think you have to have a credit card online and stuff like that here. And so that's why you might want to just use mine rather than creating your own. It's up to you. So I've set this up for another class. I'm just going to use that here. We enter a database name. So, unit 8. What are we? Trades database. Something like that. I'm not actually going to do this. I'm just going to show you how to do it. Now, right now, it's going to estimate it's going to cost $372 a month estimated cost. So we want to change some of the configuration here. We want to switch it from production to development here, and that drops down the price. It should in just a sec for us. Yeah, so that's getting down to just under $5 a month. We can then configure our database and say we don't really need that much. I want to make sure it's serverless here. I don't need very many cores here. I don't need much processing power, and I don't need much memory. So I certainly don't need 32 gigs of memory. So I can drop that down to 1 gig here and apply that. And then it should give me an estimate. Now I'm down to 15 cents a month cost estimated, plus some every time we access it, some other cost. So that's more reasonable. So I also generally switch this to locally redundant. I don't need this database shared all over the world. And I could create that database. You also have to set up some networking stuff for that. I'm not going to go, through that right now. I'm actually going to stop this because I already set this up for us. So that's what this server is set up here. And once I go to that server, I can show the connection string for that. And so here's the connection string, and that's the string that we have right here. So this Azure connection string, that's this connection string. This is the virtual database that I created, serverless database. Here, the initial catalog. I created a account and a password to connect to it. It's right now hard coding those into that. So that's set up. Now, there might be some issues with the firewall. So, again, just while I'm here, so that's the connection string for ADO.NET, which we're using. You can also connect with JDBC, Java, open database connectivity, PHP, or whatever, or Go. So there are other options there. Okay, let's go back to this. Now there's also some issues. There might be some issues with the firewall. So I think I have that opened up entirely now. So you can set up the networking stuff, including the server firewall. So originally I just had this set up for my address and then the St. Scholastic addresses, but if you're off campus, this won't work. And so I think I've now opened this up to all machines on the internet. So not the best secure solution, but it'll work, hopefully. We'll see. So that's our database setup here. So yeah, we configured this all. Now, again, creating the table and creating the stored procedures, let's see how we could do that. So that we can go do back in here in Visual Studio, actually. So in Visual Studio, if I go to my Server Explorer, if I'm logged in and I created these, there's an Azure option up here, and there's SQL databases, and then here's my database here. Now I can't do those things right here, but I can say open this up in SQL Server Object Explorer, which should open them up in this new tab here. I have it marked docked right to the left here also, but it's connecting to that, hopefully. Now the first time sometimes I've run this I think the server has been shut down, and so it has to start the server up, and it keeps the server running for an hour. After an hour, if no one is using it, it shuts down. So let me know if you have some delays or have trouble accessing this server. But I think that's what's happening now. Okay. Yes, it's not currently available, but if I go here and look at it, yeah, so it is available. Yeah, I think it just was spinning up because it was serverless. I don't know. So if I go here, I can look in databases, and there's my database here. And again, I'm in the SQL Server Object Explorer, not the Server Explorer. I went to that. And again, now I can see my tables here, and the stored procedures, there's not a folder for those, but under programmability, there is a folder for stored procedures. And again, you can just right click on these and say add new table or add new stored procedures, and I've just, again, just like we did before, I pasted these SQL commands into here to generate that. So it's very similar to that sort of system. One thing to note is that SQL tends to like to do this prefix of DBO dot and the name of things, and sometimes that shows up here and sometimes it doesn't. It's showing up here. Now, when you actually access this, we'll just say trade or insert data, so you don't include the DBO dot in when you're using these commands in your code. Okay, so that's all actually set up for us, and I could actually look at the data there too if I wanted to, just like before. I can right click on it and show the data. Okay, so that's all there. So now all you have to do here to connect up is to use this connection string. You're saying, why didn't he just show us this originally, and why do we have to learn all this other stupid stuff? Just trying to improve your lives. Okay, so now we're just going to use this Azure connection string, and here we're going to use that here. So we're going to just say connect to this client using the Azure connection string, and it'll open it up. Now if we just run it, it will hopefully run on the cloud and do the same thing, process all the trades and add them to that database that's out there. Okay, so that's the basic thing for setting up this database and getting it to work. For part one of this, I'm going to have a separate video that's going to go over part two, how to set up unit trades.